A woman was left in the desert with 3 babies. Then a cowboy made an impossible choice. The sun was already high when the woman was pushed out of the truck. The engine did not turn off. The door slammed shut, and dust rose into the air. Before she could say a single word, the truck moved again. Its tires cut deep lines into the sand and then disappeared into the endless desert. She stood there for a moment, shocked and shaking. In her arms were 3 tiny babies, wrapped in thin cloth that did little to protect them from the heat. They were only days old. Their faces were red, their cries weak. The woman tried to run after the truck, but her legs failed her. She fell to her knees, the sand burning through her clothes. The desert stretched in every direction. No road signs, no buildings, no sound except the wind and the distant cry of a hawk. The sky was clear, cruelly blue, with no clouds to offer shade. The sun felt like fire pressing down on her skin. She looked down at the babies and forced herself to breathe. Panic would not help them. She knew that. She had learned to stay calm during pain, during fear, during moments when life felt impossible. But this was different. This was the desert, and she was alone. She adjusted the babies in her arms, holding them closer to her chest to protect them from the heat. Her lips were already dry. Her throat burned. She had not been given water, not a single bottle. Not even a blanket thick enough to cover all 3 children. She remembered the moment before she was pushed out, the silence in the truck, the way no one looked at her eyes. She remembered thinking they might change their minds. They did not. Now there was only survival. She searched the ground around her. Nothing but sand, rocks, and dry bushes that cracked when touched. She found a small shadow near a rock and crawled toward it, dragging herself slowly so she would not drop the babies. The shadow was small, but it was better than nothing. She sat with her back against the rock, pulling the cloth over the babies' heads just enough to block the sun without stopping their breathing. One baby stopped crying and slept. Another whimpered softly. The third was silent, too quiet. Fear tightened her chest. She touched the baby's face. Warm, breathing, alive. Tears rolled down her cheeks, but she wiped them away quickly. Crying would only waste water her body could not afford to lose. She had to think. She tried to remember where they were left. The drive had been long. She remembered passing fences earlier that morning. That meant ranch land somewhere. Cowboys used these areas. Trucks passed sometimes, but sometimes could be days. She prayed quietly, not loudly, just words in her heart. She promised she would not give up. Not while the babies still breathed. Time moved slowly. The sun climbed higher. The air shimmered. The babies became restless again. She rocked them gently, humming a soft tune her mother once sang to her. Her voice cracked, but she kept going. Her thoughts drifted. She thought of how she had come to this moment, of promises that were broken, of trust given to the wrong people, of how quickly life could turn its back on someone once they became inconvenient. She shifted her position when the sand became too hot. The rock offered little relief now. Her head spun. She closed her eyes for a moment and nearly slipped into darkness. She forced them open again. "Stay awake," she whispered to herself. She pressed the babies against her chest, sharing what little shade her body could provide. Her arms ached, but she refused to lower them. She adjusted the cloth again, careful not to expose their skin. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time lost meaning under the burning sun. In the distance, she thought she saw movement. Her heart jumped. She squinted, shielding her eyes. Nothing, just heat playing tricks on her vision. Hope rose and fell like a cruel wave. Her mouth was so dry it hurt to swallow. Her hands trembled. She knew the signs. She was weakening, but she also knew something else. If she lay down and closed her eyes, she might not wake up again. So she stayed upright. The babies grew quieter, conserving energy the way small bodies sometimes do. That silence frightened her more than their cries. She spoke to them constantly, telling them stories they could not understand. She told them about stars, about rain, about places with trees and shade. She told them they were strong, that they mattered, that someone would come. As the sun began to lower slightly, the heat changed, still brutal but different. Long shadows stretched across the sand. The woman felt a small shift inside her chest. Evening meant cooler air. It also meant night animals and colder temperatures. She did not know which was worse. She gathered the babies closer, preparing for what night might bring. She knew the desert could be unforgiving after dark, but she also knew she could not walk, not with 3 babies, not in her condition, so she waited. She listened. The wind carried a sound that did not belong to the desert, a faint rhythm, slow, steady. Her heart began to race. She focused, holding her breath. The sound came again, a dull thud, then another, hooves. She lifted her head and strained her eyes toward the horizon. A shape appeared, dark against the glowing sky, large, moving. She raised her arm weakly, waving the cloth. Her voice was barely more than air when she tried to shout. It came out broken, thin. The shape slowed. For a moment, everything felt unreal. Like a dream that could disappear if she blinked. The figure grew clearer. A horse. A rider. The woman felt her strength slip away all at once. Relief crashed over her so fast it made her dizzy. She held the babies tighter, afraid she might drop them. The rider was still far away. He had not seen her yet, or maybe he had. She did not know. Her vision blurred. The desert seemed to tilt. She whispered one last word, not knowing if anyone could hear it. Please. Then the world went dark. The cowboy had been riding since early morning, following a familiar path across the dry land. This desert was not new to him. He knew its moods, its dangers, and its silence. He had grown up respecting it, knowing it could give life but also take it away without warning. That day he was only checking fence lines and looking for a missing calf. Nothing more. Nothing urgent. His horse moved steadily beneath him, calm and trained. The cowboy kept his eyes on the ground and the horizon, watching for signs of trouble. He was not a man who looked for problems. Life had already given him enough of those. He preferred quiet days and clear skies. As the sun lowered slightly, he felt the change in the air. Evening was coming. That was when the desert could surprise you. He slowed his horse, letting it rest when something caught his attention. A shape, small, still. At first he thought it was just a rock or a pile of old cloth left behind by careless travelers. He almost kept riding, almost, but something about the shape felt wrong. The horse shifted under him, ears forward. Animals notice things humans sometimes missed. The cowboy followed the horse's gaze and narrowed his eyes. He turned his horse slightly and rode closer. As he got nearer, the shape began to make sense. It was a person. Sitting against a rock, not moving, his heart dropped. He urged the horse forward, careful but quick. When he reached her, he saw the woman's face. Pale, dry, her eyes were closed, her head leaned forward and in her arms were bundles of cloth. Then he heard it, a soft sound. A tiny breath. Then another, babies, 3 of them. The cowboy froze for a moment, stunned by what he was seeing. A woman left alone in the desert with 3 newborn babies. No shelter, no water, no help. He dismounted quickly, tying his horse to a nearby bush. He moved carefully, kneeling beside her. He spoke softly, afraid to startle her or the babies. "Ma'am," he said gently, "can you hear me?" She did not respond. He checked her breathing, weak but there. He touched her shoulder lightly. Her skin was hot from the sun. He looked at the babies. Their faces were small and tired. One stirred slightly. The others were very still but breathing. The cowboy swallowed hard. He had water, not much. Enough for himself for the rest of the ride back. He also had some food, dried meat. Not useful for babies. His mind raced. If he stayed, night would fall soon. The desert would grow cold. If he left to get help, they might not survive the wait. If he tried to take them all with him, it would be dangerous. His horse could carry weight, but 3 babies and an unconscious woman made things complicated. He had never faced a choice like this. He poured a small amount of water onto a cloth and gently touched it to the woman's lips. Slowly, carefully, so he wouldn't waste a drop. He waited, she stirred. Her eyes fluttered open just a little. Confusion filled her face. Fear followed when she saw him. "It's okay," he said quickly, keeping his voice calm. "You're safe now. I found you." She tried to speak, but her voice was weak. He leaned closer. "The babies," she whispered. "They're here," he said. "All three." Relief washed over her face. Tears filled her eyes, but she did not cry. She barely had the strength. He gave her another small sip of water, then another. He stopped before it was too much. "Where did they leave you?" he asked gently. She shook her head slightly. "I don't know," she whispered. "Just the desert." He nodded. He did not push her to talk more. She needed rest. He looked at the sky. Night was coming fast. The cowboy made a decision. He carefully lifted one baby and wrapped it more securely. Then another. Then the third. He checked their breathing again and again. He removed his jacket and used it to shield them from the cooling air. He adjusted his saddle and prepared his horse. He knew the horse well. Strong, steady, trustworthy. He lifted the woman carefully, supporting her head and shoulders. She was light, too light. He settled her on the horse, making sure she was balanced and safe. Then he placed the babies securely, tying cloth gently so they would not slip. Every movement was slow and careful. "This is going to be a long ride," he murmured to himself. He mounted the horse and held the reins tightly, guiding the animal at a slow, steady pace. He chose a path he knew well, one that led toward a ranch several miles away. It was not close, but it was the nearest help. As they rode, the woman drifted in and out of awareness. Each time she stirred, she checked the babies first. Each time he reassured her. "You're doing good," he said quietly. "Just stay with me." The desert grew darker. Stars appeared one by one. The air cooled quickly. The cowboy kept moving even when his arms ached and his eyes burned with focus. His thoughts raced. Who would leave a woman and babies like this? What kind of situation led to this moment? He did not know. And right now it did not matter. All that mattered was getting them through the night. The horse stumbled once on uneven ground. The cowboy steadied it, heart racing. He checked the babies again, still breathing, still alive. He whispered thanks into the quiet air. Hours passed. The ranch lights finally appeared in the distance. Small, faint, but real. When they arrived, the cowboy called out loudly. Doors opened. People rushed forward. Questions filled the air. He helped them take the woman and babies inside. Someone brought water. Someone else brought blankets. Warmth surrounded them. The woman's eyes opened one last time before she was carried away. "You came back," she whispered. He nodded. "I wasn't going to leave you." As she drifted into sleep, safe at last, the cowboy stepped outside and leaned against the wall. His hands trembled now that the danger had passed. He looked out at the dark desert. He knew his life had just changed, and he knew this was only the beginning. Morning came slowly at the ranch. The sky changed from deep blue to soft orange, and the desert cooled for a short while before the heat would return. Inside the small ranch house, the woman lay on a narrow bed. Clean blankets covered her. Her body was tired, but for the first time in many hours she was safe. The babies were nearby, placed carefully in a wooden crib that had not been used in years. They slept quietly, their small chests rising and falling. A ranch woman sat beside them, watching closely, ready to help at the smallest sound. The cowboy sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee he had barely touched. His eyes were red from lack of sleep. He had not rested all night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the woman in the desert, sitting against that rock, holding 3 lives in her arms. He heard footsteps and looked up. The ranch owner, an older man with gray hair and kind eyes, sat across from him. "You did the right thing," the old man said quietly. The cowboy nodded but said nothing. He did not feel like a hero. He felt heavy. He knew saving them was only the first step. The harder part was coming next. A few hours later, the woman woke up. She opened her eyes slowly, unsure where she was. The ceiling above her was wooden, not sky. The air was cool. She turned her head and saw the babies. They were alive. She pushed herself up slightly, her heart racing. The ranch woman noticed and hurried over. "Easy," she said softly. "You're safe. They're safe too." Tears filled the woman's eyes. She covered her face with her hands and cried quietly, careful not to wake the babies. The sound came from deep inside her, a mix of fear leaving her body and pain finally being allowed to exist. After a while, the cowboy stood at the doorway. He did not enter right away. He did not want to scare her. He knocked lightly on the wooden frame. She looked up and saw him. For a moment, neither spoke. "You found us," she said finally, her voice still weak. "Yes," he replied. "I was riding nearby." She nodded, as if trying to understand how something so small could change everything. "My name is Clara," she said. He stepped inside a little more. "I'm Jack." She looked at him carefully, as if memorizing his face, not with fear, with something else, gratitude mixed with disbelief. "If you hadn't stopped," she said quietly, "we wouldn't be here." Jack shifted his weight. "Anyone would have stopped." She shook her head slowly. "No, not everyone." The room fell silent again. Later that day, Clara was able to sit up properly. She held one baby while the ranch woman held the other two nearby. Jack stood by the window, giving her space but staying close enough in case she needed help. When she was ready, she began to speak. She told them how she had trusted the wrong people, how promises were made and broken, how she was told everything would be fine, that someone would come back for her, how she waited, even when the heat burned her skin and her strength faded. "They thought I wouldn't survive," she said softly. "They thought the desert would take care of it." Jack felt his jaw tighten. He said nothing, but his hands curled into fists. Clara looked down at the baby in her arms. "I kept thinking, if I could just keep them alive a little longer, maybe someone would come." Jack turned from the window and looked at her. "You're stronger than you think." She gave a small, tired smile. "I didn't feel strong." "That's usually how it is," he said. By afternoon, word spread to nearby ranches. Someone contacted local authorities. A doctor arrived to check on Clara and the babies. They were weak but stable, dehydrated but alive. "Another few hours," the doctor said quietly to Jack, "and this could have ended very differently." Jack nodded, feeling that weight settle deeper in his chest. That night, after the ranch grew quiet, Jack sat alone outside. The desert was calm now. Stars filled the sky. The same desert that almost took 4 lives sat peacefully around him. He thought about his own life, about how he kept to himself, how he avoided getting involved, how he believed that staying neutral kept things simple. But nothing felt simple anymore. Over the next few days, Clara regained strength slowly. She helped with the babies when she could. She learned their cries, their needs, their rhythms. Jack watched from a distance at first, unsure of his place. One afternoon, Clara sat outside with the babies resting beside her in the shade. Jack was fixing a fence nearby. She watched him work for a while before speaking. "Why did you turn back?" she asked. He paused and leaned against the fence. "I don't know," he said honestly. "I almost didn't." "But you did," he nodded. Something felt wrong. She looked at the desert beyond the fence. "That feeling saved us." Jack felt a strange tightness in his chest. He did not reply. As days passed, a difficult truth became clear. Clara had nowhere to go. No family nearby, no safe place ready to take her and 3 babies. The people who left her were being searched for, but justice moved slowly. One evening, Clara spoke quietly after dinner. "I can't stay here forever," she said. "I know that." Jack looked at her, surprised. "You don't have to rush," she shook her head. "I don't want to be a burden." "You're not," he said quickly. She smiled sadly. "I appreciate that, but I need to figure out what comes next." Jack sat silently for a long time after that conversation. That night he did not sleep. He stared at the ceiling, thinking about choices, about responsibility, about how walking away would be easier. He could help arrange transport, maybe find a shelter and return to his quiet life. That was the sensible path. But every time he imagined it, he saw the desert again. He saw Clara's face when she thought she was alone. He heard the babies breathing. By morning, he knew he could not pretend this was no longer his concern. He found Clara feeding one of the babies near the window. "Can we talk?" he asked. She nodded. Jack took a deep breath. "I don't know what the future looks like," he said slowly, "but I do know I won't leave you to face it alone." Clara looked at him, startled. "Jack, I'm not saying I have all the answers," he continued, "but I have space and time, and I can help." Her eyes filled with tears again, but this time they were different, softer, hopeful. "You do that?" she asked. He nodded. "I already made the hardest choice out there in the desert. This one just follows it." Clara looked down at the babies, then back at him. "Then maybe," she said quietly, "this isn't just survival, maybe it's a second chance." Jack felt something shift inside him, something settle. Outside, the desert stretched wide and silent, but it no longer felt empty. Because impossible choices, once made, have a way of changing everything that follows. Life did not change all at once. It changed slowly, in small steps, the kind that were easy to miss if you were not paying attention. The days at the ranch settled into a new rhythm. Morning came early. The babies woke often, and Clara learned their different cries. One cried when hungry, one cried when uncomfortable, one cried just to be held. She learned quickly, even when she was still tired and weak. Jack helped where he could. At first, he did not know how to hold a baby properly. His hands were used to ropes, tools, and reins, not tiny fingers and fragile bodies. He was afraid of doing something wrong, but Clara showed him patiently, without judgment. "Support the head," she said softly, guiding his arm, "like this." He nodded and followed her lead. When the baby settled in his arms, warm and quiet, something deep inside him softened. He looked down, surprised by the feeling. "They trust you," Clara said. Jack swallowed. "I'm not sure why." "Neither am I," she replied gently, "but they do." As the sun rose each day, Jack returned to his work. Fences needed fixing. Animals needed care. Life did not pause just because something important had happened. But now every task felt different. He worked faster, not to escape, but to return sooner. Clara watched him from the porch sometimes, the babies resting near her in the shade. She noticed how he moved with purpose, how he spoke little but listened closely. She noticed how he never complained. One afternoon, a truck pulled into the ranch. Dust rose behind it. Jack's shoulders tightened as he saw it coming. Two officials stepped out. Calm voices, serious faces, they asked questions. Clara told her story again. Slowly, carefully, each word took effort. She spoke of the ride, the silence, the moment she was left behind. She did not raise her voice. She did not accuse. She only told the truth. Jack stood nearby, arms crossed, watching closely. He noticed how Clara's hands trembled when she spoke. He stepped a little closer, not touching her, but letting her know she was not alone. The officials listened and took notes. They said the search would continue. They said there were procedures, timelines, steps that had to be followed. Clara nodded. She had heard words like that before. After they left, she sat quietly, staring at the horizon. "They might never face consequences," she said. Jack did not lie to her. "That's possible," she sighed. "I thought surviving would be the hardest part." "Sometimes," he said, "what comes after is harder." That night, Clara dreamed of the desert again. She woke suddenly, heart racing, sweat on her skin. One of the babies cried, sensing her fear. She picked the baby up and held it close, rocking gently. Jack heard the sound and came to the doorway. "Bad dream?" he asked quietly. She nodded. "I keep seeing that place." He leaned against the doorframe. "It doesn't own you anymore." She looked at him. "I know, but it still feels close." He thought for a moment. "Fear doesn't disappear just because danger is gone. It fades when you replace it with something stronger." She watched him carefully. "And what replaces it?" He looked at the baby in her arms. "Purpose, connection, choice." Over the next weeks, Clara grew stronger. She began helping around the ranch in small ways, folding laundry, preparing simple meals, sitting outside while Jack worked just to feel useful again. She did not want to feel like someone waiting to be saved. She wanted to stand on her own. One afternoon, she surprised Jack by offering to help with a task near the barn. "You don't have to," he said. "I want to," she replied. He hesitated, then nodded. She moved slowly, careful with her body. The babies rested safely nearby under watch. The work was simple, but it mattered to her. When she finished, she smiled for the first time without sadness behind it. "I forgot what it feels like to contribute," she said. Jack smiled back. "You're doing more than you know." Not everyone who heard the story responded with kindness. Some visitors looked at Clara with curiosity, others with quiet judgment. Questions followed her like shadows. Why was she alone? Where was the father? Why were there 3 babies? Jack noticed every look, every whisper. One evening after a visitor left, Clara sat quietly. "They see me as a problem," she said softly. Jack shook his head. "They see what they don't understand." "That still hurts," she replied. He thought for a moment. "Then we stop letting strangers define your worth." She looked at him. He met her eyes. "You're not alone here." As time passed, a deeper question hung in the air. What would happen next? Clara needed stability. The babies needed care. Jack had a life built on quiet routines and independence. Opening his world meant risk. One night, Clara brought it up herself. "I've been thinking," she said. "I don't want to stay where I'm only tolerated." Jack listened closely. "I need a place where my children can grow without feeling unwanted," she continued. "If that means leaving, I'll understand." Jack felt a tightness in his chest. He had been avoiding this conversation, hoping time would decide for him. "I don't want you to leave," he said honestly. She looked surprised. "Because you feel responsible?" "No," he replied, "because I care." The words hung between them, simple but heavy. Caring meant commitment. Commitment meant change. The babies cried softly, as if reminding them that time was moving forward no matter what they chose. Days later, a letter arrived. There were options listed: temporary housing, assistance programs, places far away. Clara read it slowly, then folded it carefully. "I can go," she said. Jack watched her hands shake. "Do you want to?" She hesitated. "I want safety and dignity," he nodded. "Then let's make sure you have both." That night, Jack walked alone under the stars. The desert air was cool. The same stars that watched Clara nearly lose everything now watched him wrestle with his future. He thought about his quiet life, about how easy it would be to step back, about how hard it would be to move forward. But every time he imagined letting them go, the desert returned in his mind, not as fear, as a reminder. Some choices once made do not let you return to who you were before. The next morning, Jack spoke clearly. "You can stay," he said, "not as charity, not as a favor, as family." Clara stared at him, stunned. "I don't know what that looks like yet," he added, "but we can figure it out together." Tears filled her eyes. "Are you sure?" He nodded. "I made an impossible choice once already. This one feels right." The baby stirred softly, safe and warm. Outside, the desert stretched wide again, still dangerous, still powerful, but no longer unforgiving. Because this time, no one was being left behind. The desert did not change, but the people inside it did. Months passed, marked not by a calendar but by small moments. The babies grew stronger. Their cries became louder, their movements more confident. They learned to grip fingers, to follow faces with their eyes, to calm when they heard familiar voices. Each change felt like a quiet victory. Clara settled into the ranch life slowly. She did not rush herself. Healing, she learned, was not about forgetting. It was about learning how to breathe again without fear tightening the chest. Jack kept his word. He did not treat Clara and the babies as guests who might leave at any moment. He treated them as part of the place. He made space, both in the house and in his routines. The ranch changed shape around them like land adjusting to new rain. Neighbors noticed. Some came with kindness, others with questions. Jack met them all the same way, steady, calm, clear. "They're staying," he said when asked. No explanations, no apologies. Clara watched him handle these moments with quiet strength. She learned that courage did not always raise its voice. Sometimes it simply stood firm. One evening, Clara sat on the porch, watching the sky turn gold. The babies slept nearby. Jack was repairing a saddle, his movements slow and practiced. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked suddenly. He paused. "Regret what?" Stopping, turning back that day. He thought for a moment. "No," he said. "I regret that it happened at all, but not the choice I made." She nodded, understanding the difference. The past still visited her sometimes, in dreams, in sudden flashes when the wind blew just right, but it no longer controlled her. She was no longer just surviving, she was living. There were challenges, nights without sleep, days when money felt tight. Moments when fear whispered that things could still fall apart. But there was also laughter now. The first time one of the babies smiled, Jack froze, unsure if it was real. When Clara confirmed it, he laughed in disbelief, a sound that surprised even him. The ranch owner, the older man, watched all this quietly. One afternoon, he pulled Jack aside. "You've built something here," he said. Jack looked around. "I didn't plan to." "Most important things aren't planned," the old man replied. Eventually, the search reached a conclusion. The truth came out. It was not loud. It did not make headlines, but it was enough to close a door that needed closing. Clara felt lighter after that, not because justice was perfect, but because the waiting was over. She was no longer looking over her shoulder. One day, as spring pushed green through the dry land, Clara stood near the fence, watching Jack work. "I've been thinking about the future," she said. He leaned on the fence beside her. "That makes two of us." "I want my children to grow up knowing where they come from," she said, "but also knowing where they're going." He nodded. "That sounds right." She hesitated, then spoke again. "I don't want to feel like I'm borrowing a life." Jack turned to face her fully. "Then don't." She met his eyes. "What if we build one together?" The words were simple. The meaning was not. Jack took a deep breath. He had faced storms, long nights, and hard land. This felt bigger than all of it. "I'd like that," he said. From that day on, they moved forward with intention. Not rushing, not forcing, just choosing again and again to stay. Clara began teaching the babies small routines. Jack added their names to his thoughts without effort, as if they had always been there. The ranch echoed with life in a way it never had before. Years later, people would ask how it all began. Jack would usually shrug. "Wrong place, right time." Clara would smile softly and say nothing. Only they knew the truth. That it began with a woman left under a burning sky, holding on when she had no reason to believe help would come. And a cowboy who made a choice that went against comfort, against habit, against fear. The desert remained vast and quiet. But where once there was abandonment, there was now belonging. Where once there was silence, there was laughter. And where once 4 lives nearly ended, many more began. Because sometimes, one impossible choice is all it takes to turn survival into a future.